You and I are both very responsible. We were responsible in school. Obviously, I didn't go to college, but you graduated. You did very well. You've worked for the whole time. You've saved money. We always talk about keep your expenses low, and you did a fantastic job at that. On the flip side, I was very good at making money. I just wasn't good at managing it. And so my situation was I had a lot of money and very little skill set to manage it. And so we leveraged each other's skills to help try to balance that out, raise your income and get you to a more consistent level, lower my expenses to a more sustainable level. And we both said, we're going to invest this money together, knowing that we're not planning on pulling this out right away. Like, we're not planning on just cutting and running loose, right? We were talking about, we're going to get through this and get consistent cash flow from these properties, and we're not paying ourselves. We're putting that money into more properties. Welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. I am sitting here today excited, inviscerated. Is that a right word?
I don't know, but it sounds cool, so we'll run with it.
With my co-host and business partner, Cade Barrett, and we are going to share the best news we have had from South Bend, Indiana in a long time.
Dude, way back when, if you guys have been following the podcast for a while, you'll remember back when we were doing seasons on the podcast, we had an out-of-state investing season. It was back in season 3. I think it was a series of about 6 or 7 episodes where we talked about all the shit that had gone down in South Bend, at least up until that time. That was probably about a year and a half ago, and there's been a lot of moving parts since then. Also taking a rewind, I think it was episode 96, where we talked about our biggest loss yet on one of the rental properties we were finally able to sell out there and lost a boatload of money. So Today it feels good to talk about what I think is probably, just based on a numbers standpoint and the story that led up to it, probably our biggest win out there yet.
Let's talk about it. But before we get into it, let's talk about the long path that we've had to take to get here.
I think doing a recap would be good.
Okay. So as a reminder, in 2020, I was 23, you were 22, and is that right? No, I was 22, you were 21.
Yeah, that's right. 22 and 21.
And we were sitting there in a parking lot at our brokerage saying, we need to buy rentals. We're in the middle of the pandemic at this point. And we decided, after some deliberation, to buy 9 rental properties between September 27th and October 8th. And we have had a lot of up and down since then.
Absolutely. And let's talk about, I want to talk about the individual real quick, financial, environment that each of us was in at the time. I'll speak for myself because I posted a story literally before we entered this podcast saying that anybody can invest in real estate. Anybody can learn what we did here and go and replicate it. Whether you have a 9-to-5 doing something else, whether you're already in real estate, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
I know at 21 years old, I was broke as shit. And the idea was like, dude, let's go buy some properties. And we did it. At least, and again, I'll speak for myself, while being broke as shit and having not closed very many deals up until that point.
Yeah. I was coming off of working at Ruth's Chris as a server. I had gone completely broke almost exactly a year before. I worked at Ruth's Chris for 6 months, made $100,000 in real estate plus my money from Ruth's Chris. I quit Ruth's Chris, and 2020, I had an absolutely booming year. And I think I did a couple $100,000. I think I ended up around 320, and I had a lot of money saved. So I was in a little different spot. What I will say was, where you were broke financially, I was broke educationally. I did not know how to manage money. And so as quickly as I was earning money, I was spending $10,000, $15,000 a month. Do you remember that?
I remember that, dude.
And I remember being like, wow, if I don't invest this money, I'm going to spend all of it. And so you and I were coming from different places, but I want to reiterate, yeah, anybody can get into real estate. You could be completely new to real estate if you educate yourself by listening to podcasts like this one today, the episodes we've done in the past, Bigger Pockets, Real Estate Disruptors. You can take what we talk about on these podcasts and put it into action. And it takes time, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of tears, a lot of difficulties and stress. But you can make a lot of good decisions that will pay off huge down the line.
Absolutely. And I think, again, we have that whole series back in season 3 where we go more in depth, like, you know, on every step we took in order to get to that point of having 9 houses. I think as a synopsis, I'll hit on a couple of the things, right? Because everyone always asks, oh, what's step 1? You guys went and did this. What's step 1? You need to be able to, like you said, be educated and do your research, identify the market, make connections, educate yourself on the numbers in the market. I'll just throw one out there. Price to rent ratio is big. You need to look at employment, all this stuff, right? All these factors go into choosing a market. But then I'll say our primary goal in buying these rental properties was using a strategy called the BRRR strategy. And there's 1,000,001 different ways to go out and buy property, right? But our focus was doing the BRRR method. Do you want to recap what the BRRR is for everybody?
Yeah. It is buy, update, rent, refinance, repeat. So first step, buy deep, get a good discount. Second step, put money to fix the property up. It's called forced appreciation. Third step, get it rented, have a professional manager manage it, then contact a mortgage company to recoup all the purchase price and the rehab that you put into the property, and ideally get extra money out, and then take the money that you've pulled out and go buy more real estate. That is the BRRR method.
That's it. And to preface this as well, our main goal here was using OPM, other people's money, raising private money to go and buy these properties.
But
right?
Cade, how do you use other people's money if you don't have any money or track record?
You need to go out and network and make connections, because there are so many working professionals out there. You'd be surprised. Some of them your own friends and family who are sitting on money, wanting to diversify and put their money to work, right?
But how do you prove to them that you're actually a good person to lend to?
You need to build a track record, and you need to learn to be able to, you know, verbalize what you're doing and become a professional in your market. You need to know what you're talking about, right? Because if you're working to raise money and you don't know what you're talking about, that's going to come across to the people you're looking to raise money from, and they're not going to throw a penny at you. You need to be able to present essentially a business plan to them and say, hey, this is what I need the money for. This is how the money is going to be used. This is how much you're going to make on your money. And this is how you're going to get paid back in full and ideally between 3 and 6 months. And then I can go out and find another deal and put your money to work again. You have to be able to verbalize and articulate really professionally how that money is going to be used so that you can become a trustworthy individual when you're putting hundreds of thousands of dollars of other people's money into these projects.
Yeah. The only thing I'm going to add to that, because we raised money at a very young age, and it's not a secret that Jason Pritchard was the first person who lent to us. Mm-hmm. We did not have any experience with the state of Indiana. We did not have any experience owning rental properties. We had no experience borrowing private money. I actually did. I had one deal under my belt. Outside of that, the biggest thing that we had is that we are hard workers. We've demonstrated that to the people around us. We're trustworthy and willing to do anything we can to make good on promises. And 3, we made sure that when we presented the deals to our private lenders, we showed them that if we mess up and they have to foreclose on us, they're going to make a hell of a lot more money than if we pay them back.
Yeah.
So that's the last thing I want to add about credibility to get the other people's money.
Absolutely. And as we transition to the property we're talking about today, let's talk about, like you said, at one point we were at 9 rental properties within the span of 3 weeks, right? Closing, between all 9 of those. That was split up between a 4-pack and a 5-pack. We bought the 4-pack first off of Zillow, by the way. It was on market. Agents were involved. And through our negotiating skills with the help of our agent, we were able to get those, like you said, at a discount and force that appreciation.
I hear a little choir of angels like, ah, about the 4 houses because they turned out great.
Amazing. We still own all 4 of those that have really performed really well.
And they're all throwing off about $400 to $500 in cash flow a month.
Fantastic.
They've all appreciated. They're all rented out with the bank. They're all getting us depreciation. They've saved us tens of thousands of dollars each year in taxes. That was a perfect purchase.
These next 5, I think we were running on a little bit of runner's high. We close on those first 4, and we have a kind of like a pocket listing opportunity through networking where we had the opportunity to purchase these 5. Now, to note, we did our due diligence on those first 4. We did home inspections. We were extremely diligent in making that purchase.
Negotiated a lower price in escrow.
Absolutely. And these next 5, we're thinking we're big bad ballers out here, and we jump the gun. We do no home inspections. We say, hey, we just bought these first 4. We think they're going to pencil. If we're buying these 5 at around the same amount, let's do it. What could go wrong? And I'll note, out of those 5, we only own 1. We have sold off 4 of those 5, and the one we still have is the one we're talking about today.
Yeah, there were a lot of red flags. We talked about it in the last podcast with our biggest loss.
Yeah.
Bad tenants, no home inspections because of the bad tenants. The seller, what was his name? Way. If you're listening to this, Way, I don't like you. And the seller was notorious with the city. So all those properties were already on the city's watch list. There were a lot of problems there, but this last one, it's if you're at home, look up 1618 Chapin Street, South Bend, Indiana.
Yep.
This house is the lone survivor of that 5-pack, and I'm glad that we kept it. When we did a little bit of research at our notary signing, we realized in 2021,
yep,
we attempted to sell this house
for freaking pennies on the dollar.
For nothing. And nobody bought it. And thank God nobody bought it because we dealt with a lot of struggle with it, but it ended up being a great day for us today.
Absolutely. And so let's take a deep dive into the numbers. We had talked about, right, our initial goal with these was using other people's money to fund the purchase price and the rehab needed to renovate these properties and fix them up. In an ideal scenario, we envisioned not coming out any money out of pocket, right? On this 5-pack, which 1618 Chapin was a part of, we did overborrow. What was our total overborrowed amount?
We purchased the properties at a total purchase price of $130,000, and we borrowed from our private money lender $155,000.
That's right.
The $155,000 was because we were planning on about $25,000 or $20,000 of repairs.
Between all 5.
Between all 5. That could not have been more off. We had a single roof cost us $18,000. So there was a lot of pain, a lot of stress and cortisol.
Yeah.
And about 2021, when we listed Chapin, we were trying to recoup cash and just cut our losses on bad properties.
Yeah.
And, at that point, we had realized we had made some mistakes.
Yeah. We're sitting with $31,000 of private money on the property. We had been paying 10% interest only at that point for about a year and a half when we tried to list it, way longer than the initial 6 months we were planning. And the good thing, again, it comes down to having open and honest conversations with your private money lenders. We were really fortunate and blessed to have a really flexible private money lender. They were really happy with the return they were getting.
They were pumped that we weren't refinancing.
Yeah,
they said keep it forever.
They wanted to keep getting paid. But the issue here and why you go and refinance, I mentioned interest only. that $31,000, we were paying 10% interest only, which means every paycheck we were sending this private money lender every month was not contributing to the principal amount of $31,000. So over the course of a year and a half, we had paid a couple $1,000s in interest, but we still owed the private money lender $31,000.
Yeah. So the private money lender on this deal, over the last 3 years, he lent us $31,000 on this home.
Yeah.
And he made $10,000. He did absolutely
awesome.
no work to make the $10,000. He didn't have to manage us, didn't have to ask for payments, nothing.
Nope.
And when I told him that we're going to be refinancing the money out, he said, "Where's the next rental I can invest in? Because I don't want this money. I want it working."
Yeah.
So,
which is great for us, but it's also, again, it was a really great learning lesson. I would like to, at least looking forward, a year and a half is a lot of money to be paying interest only. It's a lot of money out of pocket, but it was needed for us to get to the point where we are. So we're at the point where we listed it, can't get any traction. We're sitting there cash poor in our account.
We had dumped individually each about $30,000 of our own money into our rentals.
Yeah.
And I was in a very different spot than you. I want to hear your thoughts. I was at a spot where $30,000 was an amount of money I was willing to part with because it was an investment and it wasn't really that strenuous for me. What was it like for you?
Honestly, looking back, Dave Ramsey and all the financial people who are saying you should have, some reserves built up and at least be a little bit cash padded just in case. I probably shouldn't have been pouring the money that I did pour into them. I was very fortunate to obviously be in a living situation where my costs were really, really low. So I was ready to take a full dive into that risk and put basically, save for a tiny bit of savings, almost all of my money into these rental properties because you mentioned an important point, viewing them as an investment, right? Yeah. And so nervous, stressed, scared, right? Because all this cash is going out and we know that buying rental properties is, it's deferred gratification.
Yeah, it's a long-term play.
Right? It's all a long-term play. And especially when you're in your late teens, early 20s, even at the ages we are right now, that can be a little bit difficult to grasp, right? Because we always love the big checks popping off. We always love the big influxes of cash. But seeing all that cash go out and not knowing when it's coming back, dude, it's tough. And I think that comes down to the education part and listening to why that is so powerful and important. And at the end of the day, being able to do that and now have cash in cash producing assets, I think was the right move.
Yeah. And I don't want to toot our own horn too much, but you and I are both very responsible. We were responsible in school. Obviously, I didn't go to college, but you graduated. You did very well. You've worked for the whole time. You've saved money. We always talk about keep your expenses low, and you did a fantastic job at that. On the flip side, I was very good at making money. I just wasn't good at managing it. And so my situation was I had a lot of money and very little skill set to manage it. And so we leveraged each other's skills to help try to balance that out, raise your income and get you to a more consistent level, lower my expenses to a more sustainable level. And we both said, we're going to invest this money together, knowing that we're not planning on pulling this out right away. We're not planning on just cutting and running loose, right? We were talking about, we're going to get through this and get consistent cash flow from these properties. And we're not paying ourselves. We're putting that money into more properties.
Absolutely. And so I think here is another kind of breakthrough point for us. We list this property because we don't have the money to fix it up. Bad tenant, not making any money. It's what...
on code enforcement.
It's what one of our local investors here in town, Michael Zuber, would call an alligator property. We were just it was eating all the cash, right? And we're not able to sell it. And we pull it off the market. And some people on the outside might be looking at, well, you don't have the money to fix it up. You're actually losing money on it.
You've lost a lot of money on it.
You've already had a ton of sunk costs into it. What the hell are you guys going to do now? If you can't sell it, you can't sell it at a discount because you don't have the money to come in and make your private money lender whole at the moment. What are you going to do? And we had to get creative, right? We had this property that needed to be fixed, and also a couple other properties in our portfolio had some deferred maintenance that we were not able to do yet because we were cash poor. So we go out and we actually raise a second private note of $20,000. So a private money that we raised in the amount of $20,000 that we then used to help fund the rehab on this property, 1618 Chapin, and also help cover, some of the pain points across the other properties in the portfolio.
Yeah. Don't go do this if you don't know what you're doing. Before pulling out more debt, that would put us in a worse position.
Instead of owing $31,000,
we owed $51,000. We knew that the first $12,000 or however much we dumped into Chapin was going to be the first money we spent to get that home to a price point that we could then, if in a bad situation, sell not only to cover our debt, but to recoup the full profit that we can to cover any other debts that we had at the time.
Yeah.
And so we had done our research. We saw that Chapin, if repaired, could sell for quite a bit more than the price point we were listing it for as is.
Yep.
That was the deciding factor for us to be able to go pull out more cash. So now it's late 2021. We have $51,000. We kick out the tenant who is not paying, causing code enforcement issues, causing problems for the neighbors. We immediately went to go fix it up. Am I getting my story right?
Yep.
We get Chapin rehabbed, and then everything goes wild on our deal that we lost a ton of money on. And so that sucked all of our bandwidth in South Bend. We had to do roof. We had a tenant that was doing drugs, scaring off contractors. We had to switch property managers. A whole bunch of stuff happens. Come March of this year, all of a sudden, bandwidth is completely freed up. We just lost $12,000 of our own money. And we say, what are we going to do to turn this around? And that's when we looked at Chapin again and said, the market has gone up ridiculously. It's currently rented under market, but we have a 10% interest only payment on it. If we refinance it now, our payment will go up because interest only can be cheaper since you're not paying principal at all. But a slightly higher payment that is whittling down at your debt is better than just interest only, where you're just paying, $100 or $200 less each month, not making any dent in your debt.
Yeah.
So we said, how much does Chapin command in the market right now? And we reached out to our realtor, and she suggested a price range. Do you remember what it was?
She had said somewhere in the high 90s if done, as well as it should be for something, rental ready, refreshed, and rehabbed on the market. High 90s.
So when we did that, we said, okay, our experience with our refinances were that our appraisals came in low.
Yeah.
And we said, if we could pull out $59,000 or somewhere in there, 75% of $70,000 or $75,000, we said we'd do it. So we called our lender, who had just done our refinances 2 years ago for our golden boys, the first four. And she took in our loan application. And this is where being professional helps. We knew what she needed. We were pretty quick to get her everything she needed. Yeah. This process was way shorter than the first four. And not a month later, we're running our numbers. We're like, you know what? Let's just cash out as much cash as we can from a cash out refinance. And the appraisal came back. And what did it come back at?
Yeah, so we had the appraiser go out. We started the refinance process. The appraiser does his thing, checks the property, compares them to comparables in the area, and comes back with a value of $106,000.
Boom.
Now,
we paid $25,880 or $25,800, I think, somewhere under $27,000 for this house, and it just appraised for 106 3 years later.
When we have around $51,000 in debt attached to the property, right? But the $106,000 technically comes back clean, because for those who, are familiar with the appraisal process, if you've bought a home or sold a home, sometimes an appraiser can attach stipulations to where when you're getting the loan, some items need to be fulfilled before the bank will loan on it. This could be if there's unsafe conditions, repairs, small repairs that need to be made, etc. Ours came back technically clean, but the underwriter said, hey, the appraiser pointed out the basement was a little damp and has some pooling of the water, and we're going to need to figure this out. Even though the appraiser didn't attach it as a stipulation, us as the underwriters, the bank who's going to be loaning on it, they want to be more comfortable. We got to figure this out, right?
Shout out to our team for calling that out, because you and I were not sure if we had to do anything or not.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't like water in a basement, period.
Yeah.
But we had just had very heavy rain in South Bend, and our property manager had brought up that even his own personal residence had some moisture in his basement from the heavy rains.
Yeah.
So shout out to Steve.
Yep.
Steve, our property manager, got immediately involved. We already had kind of a difficult time reaching the tenant. He pays on time, but not a great communicator.
Yeah.
Keeps the house up pretty well.
Yeah.
But we got Steve out there with a licensed contractor, and it was a pretty simple fix. They found a couple little cracks in the basement foundation wall that were not structural issues, but were leading to some moisture. And they sealed that up, all up to code and up to speed, and wrote a letter addressed to the lender that we provided that cleared that all up for us. That was about a 1 week delay.
Yeah.
But at $106,000 appraisal value, we were more than happy to work with them.
Absolutely. And after that, we were in cruise control till closing. And at the time we're recording this right now, we're on the day of closing, and everything was smooth sailing after that. And so if we look and do a quick recap of the numbers, right? We paid technically with the overborrowed amount on the 5, $31,000. We went out and technically have another note of $20,000, even though it was used on several properties, but a big chunk of it on Chapin. So we kind of lump it in with Chapin here. $51,000 of private debt. Now, you made a good point. When you go to do a cash out refinance, a bank will loan you traditionally 75%, up to 75% of the appraised value. And that'll be the loan amount. Sometimes, like we were telling our buddy Keaton yesterday, you can go up to 80% and pay some more fees, but you're traditionally going to be at that 75%.
I also want to call out, if you lend more, your payment gets higher. So there is diminishing returns on how much money you want to get back versus how much money you're going to make each month until you refinance again down the road. Absolutely.
And for those of you out there, back when I didn't even know what a refinance was, I was super confused. But 75% loan to value, what does that even mean? What that means is the bank will give you a loan, 75% loan to value, LTV. And the reason they won't just say, hey, this property is worth $106,000, we'll give you 100% of that. We'll give you a loan for $106,000. Is the bank needs to have some skin in the game, right? In case, you stop paying, in case something else goes wrong with the property, the bank needs to have their asses covered, which is why they leave about that 25, sometimes 20% margin in there for them in case something goes wrong. Right. And so 75% of that 106,000 came out to be a loan amount of $79,500. So the bank says here, we're giving you $79,500. And we need to keep in mind, okay, bank's going to give us $79,500. We owe 51-ish and some change on this property. We need to pay some of the closing costs associated with doing the refinance, right?
That was about $5,000.
About $5,000. And after it's all said and done, right, we take that $79,500, we make our private money lenders whole. So our private money lender number 1 gets his $31,000 back. Private money lender number 2 got their $20,000 back, paid our closing costs, and we end up with
$23,495.53
tax fucking free.
Let's talk about this because a lot of people get confused. If we sold this property and made a profit, if we made $23,495.53 at our current tax bracket, we would be paying right around 20% of our profit directly to the IRS. Because this money is coming to us in the form of a refinance, meaning we still have debt. This is a loan, not income. We get to take that money 100% tax-free and use it for whatever we want. And we're at 7.5% interest rate.
Jesus,
so
right.
our payment jacked up. We erased it. It went from
$693 and some change.
It went from a slightly lower payment to $693. The house is currently rented for $850.
A little bit under market, but yeah, at $850.
And so our cash flow went down pretty drastically. And this is where it's important to talk about why the BRRRR method has repeat at the end of it, not BURR. It's BURRR. It's like a pirate. Sorry, I had to do it. So Cade and I already own other properties. We have one property in mind that the tenant is not paying. It's the last of our Golden Boy package that did not get a full rehab and rent increase. Mm-hmm. That property currently has almost no debt on it. Less than $20,000. Our payment's less than $200 a month. And with this almost $24,000, some of the money goes to pad our accounts again. We are advocates of always having a safety net.
Absolutely.
The rest of it, we were debating about taking some of it home for ourselves. You know, we've put money in. Business is slower now. I would really, really like to have a little extra cash. But again, delay gratification, follow the process. We're going to take that money and work on more real estate.
Yeah. And this is not to say, you know, there's one right answer here. To rewind a little bit, like you said, at a 7.5% interest rate, that's a high interest rate, dude. Our four Golden Boys, they're at 4.5%. So we're 3% higher than those. Our monthly payment is just shy under $700, with rent only being at $850. That's really slim cash flow. But we look at that.
It's currently negative $13 a month if you account for everything.
If we account for everything, being negative $13, right? But we look at that and we say, okay, this is where the repeat comes into play. If we can take advantage of this BRRRR method, take advantage of the power of investing in real estate and say, okay, again, delayed or deferred gratification. Let's take some slimmer cash flow on this now. If we can take $24,000 out of this property tax-free and go pick up another property, and then when rates come down, refinance the 7.5% down to a 5%, or wherever it ends up being whenever we decide to refinance it, and have that cash flow bump back up again, that's the power, right? We may have slimmer cash flow now, but we now have $24,000 tax-free that we can use and go buy, like you said, another property.
And I want to also bring up 2 points. One, you and I are advocates of when people get scared to buy, that is the time to buy. Mm-hmm. If interest rates stay high for a while and we go into the December season, all the homes in South Bend will be on discount. They have terrible weather. Nobody buys. Nobody rents. We've experienced this firsthand. We will take full advantage and full court press that market to find a good deal. When we get that deal, we have the funds to not come out of pocket again. That's the leverage half. The second half is when interest rates come down, demand will go up because more people can afford to buy. When demand goes up, prices go up. And so all of a sudden, our $106,000 house on Chapin may be worth $130,000. And when you go to refinance it, we only have to cover a loan amount of $79,000. Mm-hmm. So as long as we can refinance $79,500 minus whatever payments we've already made to the debt, all of a sudden your payment could go from $700 to $550. And you have a more valuable home and now another home that's also purchased at a good price and also at 5.5% or 5%.
And you have that time that's gone by where rents have only increased and your rent has gone up while your payment has gone down, which boosts that cash flow even more. That distance is growing wider, rent's getting bigger, loan payments getting smaller, and that margin is just getting bigger.
Now let's talk about it, because you can't buy a house right now in South Bend that's decent for $24,000. That used to be the case. It's not now. Our current strategy to buy our next property, and we're still flushing out everything we have to do. The likely process will be that we take our money from Chapin, we work on the property from the Golden Boy package that needs work.
Yep.
It has so little debt on it that once we're done, we are considering two options. Either keep massive cash flow, over $800 a month on it, or refinance it. And from our current estimations, which are 6 months out from when we would actually be able to execute, or at least 3 months out, this house is likely going to pull back $45,000 in tax-free money. It will lower our cash flow. But again, we doubled our purchasing power to buy another property. And the same rules that we just talked about, the 7.5% going down, the values going up, the rents going up, the payment staying stable or refinance lower, all of that compounds. And in the meantime, buying another property means more tax benefits. And so at the end of the day, our goal, and we've said this from the start, is to create cash flow and long-term success. And for us, there's multiple strategies now, because we have endured 3 very, very hard years where we had a lot of cash going out, but thank God the market went up. We have great property management helping us now, and we have a realtor that we trust in South Bend who sends us deals, who has been a great friend to us. And so all these connections over 3 years position us now to be in a much smarter buying position than 3 years ago when we were brand new, trying to just get our feet wet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to rewind before we wrap up again to this mindset shift that I think needs to happen, to where, the I can't, or the I don't know how, or however it is, needs to be translated into, again, I'll repeat it, anybody can repeat this, right? We were 21 and 22, combined, not a ton of money, right? No, zero experience with buying out-of-state rental properties. There needs to be a mindset shift that needs to happen. And I'll use this example. We just shared that one of those 4 original houses, the payment on it is $220. Even if we look at this one on Chapin, $700. People have car payments that are over $1,000.
The average car payment is over that right now.
I'm sure a lot of you even listening probably have some car payments that are more than $200 or around that $700 mark.
Sell your fucking car and get a Civic
for a depreciating asset.
Go get a depreciating asset. I can't believe that we listened to the advice of these people that were in front of us when we were that age. We're still pretty stupid right now. Like, you're 24, I'm 25. We still to this day ask for advice from the people sitting across from us at the podcast, and we try to implement it.
Yeah.
But remember, every day I'd come in and talk with Benny and Jason, because all of a sudden I'm selling all these houses and I'm making all this money. And every day I'm like, I'm going to go get a Scat Pack. I'm going to go get a Hellcat. And they were like, do not buy the car till your active income or your passive income can pay for it.
Yeah.
And dude, what great advice. And right now we are pulling in consistent cash flow from the majority of our properties. We have leveraged at this point in 3 years, $45,000 plus in tax benefits that we actually could use. We have great reputation for private money lenders. We have skills that we can apply from out-of-state investing to our business. And I think overall, we're much more responsible when it comes to these decisions than if we were just getting started today.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, we both... My goal here, and we had a podcast a couple of weeks ago just talking about, we were talking about the silent killer, inflation, talking about how, you your normal 401k and your Social Security, if you're banking on those, it's just not going to cut it.
You have an investment account, right?
Uh-huh.
What do you think your investment account has returned in 3 years? Is it anywhere near
No.
the amount of money that these rentals have made us?
Absolutely not. No. And I think, again, it's a mindset shift that needs to happen. And I think, I speak for both of us when I say we don't claim to be some sort of professionals with doing what we've did. Like we said, we made a shit ton of mistakes. We lost a shit ton of money. We've also made a good amount of money. But I think this learning experience has showed that, hey, we can do it. It can be replicated. And we want to help other people do the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're in real estate full-time, part-time, not at all or not. Like, this is what needs to happen for people who are wanting to enjoy a retirement that's comfortable, that's not down to every penny, paycheck to paycheck every month, banking on your 401k and Social Security. Like, this stuff is powerful, right? Real estate, they're not making any more of it, right? And people, again, I think it's a mindset shift that needs to happen and that we really push, right? Like, we don't claim to be professionals or the top shots or whatever it is, right? Like, we're down to 5 doors, dude. There's a ton of people with thousands of doors. We just want to take what we've learned and what, this powerful story can do and just show other people how to do it.
Yeah.
Because anybody can do it.
And, it becomes a lot like a game. And I think a lot of people hate work right now because it's work. But I know for us, there's been times where you and I don't know if we've ever cried together, but I know we've cried separately because of these deals.
Yeah.
And I know that we've both been in really, really hard spots because of this. And this has tested our friendship, our partnership. It's tested a lot. But we say this all the time. Like, we get our asses kicked all the time. And our goal is to show you how we got our asses kicked and then show you things like this where getting beat up was worth it.
Yeah.
And I think, just like you said, you have to change your thought process of I can't to I will, or I'm not smart enough to I will make it happen. Because yes, we are not stupid, but we are not geniuses. And we just followed the advice that we're giving to you today. And I know that in our current market, there are people who think there is no way to make money. And if you can drop that sentiment and start thinking about where are the opportunities for me to better myself financially, you can find them. For us, it's going to be buy more properties when the market is slow to get deep discounts, knowing that we're going to get our asses kicked a few times, but come a couple years down the line when the market makes a great recovery, because it always does, then we can go and have more days like this more consistently.
Absolutely. Absolutely, dude. I mean, as we wrap up, I think if you guys are listening or watching and, have more questions, stuff's firing off in your brain, I always like referring back to that season 3 we did on out-of-state investing.
Season 2.
Was it season 2?
Yeah.
Season 2. And go listen to those episodes. We go really in depth from identifying a market to raising private money to building your network to the actual purchases, right? And I think there's a lot of great info in there. But again, as always, like we basically cap off every single podcast, we're here to help and answer any questions that you guys have. We're here to provide value. And so go take a listen to those podcasts if you're curious and learning more about going out and buying some rental properties out of state. And we're always just a call or a text or an email away or a DM away from anybody who's got more questions based on this podcast. We're an open book.
Yeah. Next week, we have a good friend coming in.
We've got a great lineup over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, we've got like 6 weeks lined up, but next week will be great. We have a newer investor who has made it the decision that he is going to make this work. He's going to come in and talk about some awesome stuff. The week after that, we have the Ironman podcast with our coach, Sean Tucker. That will be great because I think you and I are sitting here today in a much better space, in part to the coaching and training that we've had with the Ironman.
Yep.
We've got a fantastic book review coming up. We have another out-of-state investor, local realtor who's crushing. He's going to talk about his experience. We've got a lot of stuff coming down the pike. So we are very much excited about the next few weeks. And I think we're riding on a high from getting 23 grand.
Absolutely we are, dude. It's time to celebrate. I'm glad we did this podcast, shared this info, and like you said, a great lineup coming up over the next few weeks. So stay tuned, you guys, and we'll see you next week on the Pursuit of Property podcast.
See you later, guys.